Welcome back. No, I'm not uploading it to the wrong channel. No, I didn't forget the other set already. What we've got going on outside, it's really windy. The wind is blowing our Christmas lights. Yes, Yvonne's got the Christmas lights up as of a couple days ago. But they're slamming up against the windows in that room. So it's really kind of noisy and distracting. So I thought, well, all right, I'll do this on the hockey set, even though I really shouldn't be. But we'll do that, and we'll just ignore it. So I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind over the last few weeks. And it's one of those things that makes me wonder, so have I aged out of the target audience for certain movies, or is this just a continuation? And it's also based on yesterday I watched a Red Letter Media video where they reviewed Barbarian. I'm glad they liked it. I'm glad that critics generally like it. It's a very good movie. Again, there's no jump scares. It's not, some super scary over the top movie. It's just a really well made movie. Some good old-fashioned tension and drama building, which a lot of horror movies now don't really do. It's just all about screaming and jump scares. And pretending that they're based on real-life events. There's that. So there's always the based on true events. And I think, yeah, how flimsy is that based on going to get? But I wanted to talk about how there's iconic horror villains. You've got obviously Jason Voorhees, you've got Freddy Krueger, you've got Michael Myers, you've got Pinhead and Hellraiser, although I've always maintained he's not really a villain. He's just there to mete out justice, hell style. There are certain rules, and there are certain things. And so, if you're messing around with forces you don't understand, maybe you should put the puzzle box down. But the one thing with Hellraiser movies, I never quite understood what people were looking for with that. Like, oh, I want power. You sure about that? Because everybody who opens this puzzle box ends up getting mangled. So I'm not sure that's the kind of... But anyways, that being said, except Kirsty, I guess. But anyways, the horror villains, the icons, of course, there will always be attempts to bring them back, make new movies, reboot it. They tried rebooting Nightmare on Elm Street. It was awful. They rebooted Friday the 13th. I enjoyed the movie. And for everybody that says, well, it's not as good as the old ones were terrible. And also, I've heard a lot of people saying that, well, Barbarian, it's heavy-handed with its social messages. Yeah, all horror movies have always had, like, what are the messages you get from Friday the 13th movies? Don't have sex and don't do drugs, and you'll probably live through the movie. So, I mean, it's the sin thing. And so that's something that I feel like in movies is still a thing. That maybe the sins have changed over the decades, but usually, very often in horror movies, they try to make it so you don't feel bad for the people that are getting, bunched up by the villain. And depending on the movies, of course, in some of the Friday the 13th movies, the villains are the supposed victims in this, who in some cases are villains, they can be interminable. You're like, that guy's awful. Man, he's going first. And then in some horror movies, they do go first, and in some, they're not gone until late. They might sacrifice somebody else so they can live for 5 more minutes, which again is something that gets tied into with Barbarian 2. But that being set aside, it is clear to me that in the horror community right now, Art the Clown has become the new big villain. Now, here's where I'm torn. Now, I've watched bits and pieces of Terrifier 2, and I know it's over 2 hours long. I was actually surprised to hear Jay from Red Letter Media yesterday. I mean, it's in the Barbarian review too, talking about how he has no interest in Terrifier 2 because it's just gore. It's just gore fest, and there's no plot. And he said that of the first Terrifier and said he hated it. So I thought that was interesting. And Mike was talking about how, the torture movies didn't do anything for him, and certain horror movies he just has no interest in. But I always kind of prided myself on watching horror movies and pushing myself. It's part of how I ended up watching as many horror movies as I did as a teenager, which was, okay, let's find the scariest, the goriest, and see if we can get through it. That's how I ended up finding Evil Dead, because it was one of the video nasties in the 80s, and it was, all right, let's see how bad this is. And the first time I watched the first Evil Dead movie, I had a hard time sleeping. I think I was 12. I want to say I was 12 the first time I watched it. And it was jarring, because that was a different kind of horror movie. I had always seen slashers. There are different kinds of horror movies. I'd always watched slashers with Jason and Freddy. And so this was a departure. And then later on, I would watch Last House on the Left, which was nauseating, very nauseating. I might be one of the very few that actually enjoys is the wrong word. I prefer the remake of Last House on the Left to the original. I prefer it. I don't enjoy either movie, but I preferred the remake to the original. The original, in parts, it feels very corny and silly, and then there's other parts that are very visceral and just feel very, very real. Um, and so it feels like Art the Clown has become this new Freddy, Jason, all that, but he feels scarier. Like there's something with this character, and he still doesn't talk. And I've complained before about how villains, and I don't know if I've ever done it in a video, but I've complained about it to people when I talk about horror movies that, Michael doesn't talk and Jason doesn't talk, and there's other villains that don't talk, and it's kind of done. Like Leatherface really doesn't talk, and it's kind of overdone. So to have another villain that doesn't speak is one thing, but he mimes. Art the Clown mimes, and I've gotten into the lore and the various movies that he's been in, and all of the appearances, and when the actor changed, and how the role seemed to become better when the actor changed. That the actor is portraying Art the Clown now is just absolutely spot on. So I'm torn on the whole Terrifier 2 thing. It's not released on digital yet, not for free anyways. Like I can't watch it on Netflix or anything. But I know it's playing in a couple of theaters near here, but it's not like I can take my wife to that. There's no way I would subject her to that. But I'm torn because it does feel like it's this weird divergence, or no, not really a divergence. It is two things coalescing. You have the over-the-top gore fest, which is usually reserved for Cannibal Holocaust. Your various Italian zombie movies, for instance, but they're not usually associated with an iconic villain. So now there's an iconic villain that's been mixed with this, and I think on some level, it's brilliant. And I say it like that because, like, it's not like there's much of a script there. After I watched the first movie, I did the review on this channel, and that was over 3 years ago. I did check before recording this. I did double check to make sure Jenna Kanell was okay. And that's the truth. Like, I know it sounds weird, but Terrifier was like this, kind of messing with my head a bit, and it sort of made me feel like, okay, so am I too much of a baby to watch this? But yeah, when her character died, I honestly kind of upset. I was like, oh, because the way they set it up at the start, and I get it, they set it up at the start that these two girls are your main characters, right? And usually in horror movies, it's pretty straightforward. One of the first characters that you meet will end up being the final girl that will defeat the villain. And in this movie, that didn't happen. Those girls are both gone, and the final girl comes in after. Well after. And the survivor is still really not right. Really messed up. And so, yeah, she's a survivor, I guess. It's bad though, and she's gone. She's not there anymore, and you get it. You totally get why she ends up in the crazy house, which is where she is in the new movie too. But just going through all the lore and everything, it's interesting because it really has kind of made this new icon in horror while having the movie be complete and total splatterfests. What's interesting to me too is that I've watched, there's the one part that I've watched, and I'm not getting, you guys would know, it's just called 1 Minute of Terrifier, and it's somebody recording. I think it's just recording with their phone what they're seeing on the screen in the theater. And it's I mean, this girl would have been dead pretty early in the attack. She's still alive, she's still screaming, and he's basically just dismembering her while she's still alive. And it's messed up. It's messed up. And here, the weird thing with horror is that they have a person's body do things that it would not do in real life, which I know is how some people deal with those horror movies, that they look and they go, well, that's ridiculous. The human body won't actually do that. So, Yeah, there's blood everywhere and everybody's screaming, but you can't do that. The only exceptions for me would be when something's used as a murder weapon in a movie, and I say that wouldn't work, or that wouldn't do that. Yeah, the killer's strong, but good luck. And there are times too where somebody will and especially in Friday the 13th, where they'll get stabbed and they're down and they're dead, and it's like, I don't think that would kill them, not that fast. But again, in Friday the 13th, it's not serious. It's their own universe. So for the Art the Clown movies, which is Terrifier, Terrifier 2, All Hallows Eve, he was also in, I think VHS was where he ended up starting. But Art the Clown's been in these movies, and it feels like he's got his own universe, and maybe Human Anatomy works different. And maybe that's why he's so giddy about finding out how people work and doing it in a very, very unsavory way. He seems smart. I don't know why. Just go to medical school. Just learn how to fix people rather than, But I'm torn because I kind of feel like he's this iconic horror villain, and I should watch these movies, and I should be able to stomach it, and it shouldn't be it's just a movie, which is what was the tagline for Last House on the Left. Just keep telling yourself it's just a movie, it's just a movie. And it's very, very smart marketing there. Very smart marketing. But I do find myself torn. So I thought, make a video, mention it to people on the internet, and see if there's other horror hounds and what their opinion is on it. Because, again, I've heard about the plot for the movie, and its plausibility is just off the scale. But again, are you looking for plausible in a horror movie? It's sort of like getting upset that people are making stupid decisions. Well, of course they are, because if they're not, the movie's over really quickly. Wait, this was called Camp Blood? He murdered people how many days ago? Okay, so we're packing it up. Yeah, I don't care. He murdered people here 4 days ago. Okay, there's still blood there. I'm out of here. And so everybody would leave, and that's the end of your Friday the 13th movie. Done. But yeah, I do find myself admiring the character of Art the Clown, admiring the miming that he does, the character that's created, the idea that he's supernatural is there as well, that there's the demonic side of it too. Which means eventually, if they wanted to, and if it gets watered down enough, you could bring Pinhead in. Have Pinhead say he's like Satan's Avenger, or I don't know. You could bring in Spawn, right? You could have Spawn in there. Hey, Spawn versus Art the Clown would be fantastic. It would just go on forever, because, Spawn has 9,999 HP at the start of the comics and of the movies in the series. So if you're going to start a movie, you have to start him with full hit points, right? He has to have full hit points. So that's 9,999, and he's got good weaponry and good armor. So I think I'm writing myself a movie here, Spawn versus Art the Clown. But the other question I would have is, so now they've got this character that they can sell merch for, that's very popular. I know there's already plans to do another movie. Where does it go? So do you end up watering it? So this is the other question I have. Do they end up watering down the character at some point? Do you end up getting to a Terrifier 6, a Terrifier 7, and end up watering down the character so that he's more mainstream, and you can put it into 3,000 plus theaters, and you can make 50, 60 million in an opening weekend, and just tone down the gore, and you can still leave everything else the same? Or do you think they stick to their guns and say, nope, this is a niche audience, we'll keep it this way, and we're not going to expand this to a much wider audience, which you could do if you tone down the gore and some of the just nastiness. And I sometimes wonder about people that write some of this. Like, I know watching movies from Rob Zombie, I've thought, man, how messed up is this guy, like, in his brain, that he thinks this stuff? Like, I don't think I could think this stuff up. I hope not. I kind of think that if I wrote something like Terrifier 2, I would have to sit myself down and go, okay, I have to think about things in my life and what my plans are, and am I a good person, is where we're going to start. But, and yet I get it. Like, I did try at one point when I was writing as a teenager to try to come up with a new iconic villain, and it was tough, because you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, you're trying to write it different, and you're trying to, and for me the main thing was, if I'm going to write a horror story, and if I'm going to have like a Jason Freddy type character, he has to have a good reason for what he's doing. I wanted to make it so that as a villain, he's doing these awful things, but if you were watching a movie with him in it, you go, I hate this, but I totally understand why he's doing that. I totally get it. I totally get why this. I'm a terrible person. I totally get it. So similar to like I said, where sometimes in these slasher films they make it so you don't really feel bad for the people. The camp counselors. Sometimes characters in Halloween are awful. Like in the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, I don't know that there's a single character that's a good character, that's a nice guy. Maybe Danny Trejo's character, who's his prison guard in the first movie, maybe, right? That's about it, I think. Because even Loomis in the Rob Zombie movies, Loomis is just kind of sleazy. So yeah, there's that. But let me know your thoughts about Art the Clown, about the Terrifier movies, about the super over the top gore that's produced in these movies, because it puts me off. It does. It puts me off. And even though it's not physically possible, some of the things that he's doing, it still makes me sick to my stomach on some level. And then I think, so am I really a horror movie buff or no? And so that's where the line is. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you've seen the Terrifier movies, if you watched any of the Art the Clown stuff, let me know your thoughts on his character and on the future. Because as I've said, with horror movie icons, you can market the heck out of them. But I think if they really want to get the marketing going and really have everybody buying in, they'd have to make a movie that's probably more toned down gore-wise. And I don't know that the creator would be interested in that. And I don't know that that would stick to the vision. But again, some of the stuff that I saw in just that 1 minute I watched, I was like, what has to be wrong with a person to write this? Or are they genius for writing it? Or are they messed up? Or is it both? Sometimes it can be both. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.